Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer, and today I'm going to be playing a short stream here on Twitch of Supreme Ruler 1936. The game is newly released by BattleGoat Studios. It is the fourth game in the Supreme Ruler series, following Supreme Ruler 2010, 2020, Cold War, and now Supreme Ruler 1936. It's a real-time strategy game which puts you in the role of a country during the lead up to and the actual war, the Second World War that is. And let's get started. This is just kind of an initial impressions or a playthrough or whatever you want to call it. It's going to be somewhat short, only probably about an hour, and then I'll revisit this potentially in a second video. But there are several different playing modes: single player, multiplayer. I don't know what the player profile is, you can set that up. The game is basically very similar to Supreme Ruler Cold War, which I played a little bit of, but I'm not terribly familiar with the game. I've got a previous video on it if you want to see my limited experience in it. It is both scenario-based games, sandbox games, and a campaign game. There are 4 different campaign games. Today I'm going to be playing the Italian campaign. That's a campaign that starts in 1936, puts you in the role of Italy, and the lead up to World War II. You become Benito Mussolini, and you start off with the goal of conquering Ethiopia. So you can see here as the game starts, you get a little pop-up on the screen. Our initial goal is to eliminate Ethiopia and claim Abyssinia. Our past humiliation will be buried with the new victories. Conquer Ethiopia so we can create an East African territory from our gains. So first of all, let's go ahead and slow this down to very slow. You can change the time here, or the speed at which the game progresses, by clicking on this little plus minus sign, or you can pause entirely. But we're going to go with very slow. We're playing as Italy right now, so I have the filters turned on to show the ownership overlay, as well as supplies. But essentially with ownership, you can see obviously we control Italy here on the map, but we're not really interested in Italy right now. What we're interested in is a war that's in progress. If we move a little bit southeast, we'll see the country of Abyssinia. This is also known as Ethiopia, and Italy's in the process of trying to conquer it. We're already in the middle of the war, which started in 1935, so you can see Italy has some progress here. This orange represents our progress. The enemy capital here is here. Interestingly enough, Ethiopia is its capital's right smack dab in the middle of the country, so it's kind of the first, you can't advance from either direction all that effectively. Somalia here and Eritrea here are both Italian protectorates or provinces or colonies or whatever you have it. Italy took them in attempts to take over Abyssinia in the past, and yeah. So let's go ahead and zoom in here a bit. There is a lot more to this game, but I just can't touch on all of it. You can see here there's a land, state, finance, resource, research, defense production, and just a general defense. Tabs here, they all give you different information here. For example, the state information gives you the information about your country. It's a dictatorship with a population of 44 million, 338 million in the treasury. Gives you some information on the economy, domestic policies, military strength, and diplomacy, as well as obviously showing you a picture of your leader, which is an Axis-leaning fascist dictator known as Benito Mussolini, which is who you are playing as. So the enemy capital right here is Abadiah. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. That is our end goal. Of this campaign. If we take the capital, I believe we win the war, so obviously that would be a important objective for us. Okay, so what you can do also is you can set objectives. You can see here this place has these different towns have little markers on them, which basically indicates that we would like to control that particular objective, so we can change our military focus to offensive, balanced, or defensive, and we can give that city a certain priority with taking the city over. You can see here we've already got quite a few forces in here, and let's see here, there's some cabinet ministers and different items like that. You can see here's our cabinet, trade relations, acquiring technologies. You can basically set a posture, if you will. Okay. I'm not sure. I feel like these units have some kind of AI control, um, but I'm not sure to what extent. So I definitely want to advance. I'm just not sure the route I want to go for it. So we'll go ahead and click the left mouse button on the All option. When we select a stack of units, the All button allows us to give orders to a group of units. By default, the Move order is selected, and then you simply right-click to where you want to go. And then you see your troops. As you can zoom in here, we'll start moving. Now again, we have the game on very slow, so these movements are going to take a little bit of time. We can certainly speed them up. You can create battle groups. Not sure what that mic symbol does. Again, there is a certain level of AI control over these as well. Go ahead and select these guys. We're going to try and move them here. Again, move these guys here. My goal is to try, and we don't know if we'll be successful, but I would like to try and overwhelm the Ethiopians. You can see there I've already ordered these guys to move along that route. I'm going to wait to move these troops till the line gets a little bit closer. And then we're going to zoom out here a bit. So we've got these guys, these stacks advancing on the city of Desi. Once we take that, we can begin our main drive down toward the capital of Addis Ababa, or however again you pronounce that. And then we're going to move down here to the south a little bit. We've got a little bit of a advance going on down here. Following the rail lines. Obviously, you know, the rail lines certainly make it easier to supply your troops. We'll go ahead and take this large unit. We're going to move them. I don't really know where I want to move them. I guess we could target this city. What is it? Dilea? Well, let's target these industrial facilities first. I'm moving these guys because they're the furthest away. I guess I can move these guys as well. I just don't want to be moving any isolated units all exposed on their own, because Ethiopia is quite a tough nut to crack. It was historically. This is actually the second Italian-Ethiopian war, or second war between Italy and Abyssinia. We're going to speed things up just a little bit to normal now. But yes, this is actually the second conflict between these two countries. It's currently in game 1936, but historically, Italy actually fought a conflict against Ethiopia in 1895 to 1896, in which Italy was thoroughly embarrassed. It was during the tail end of the race for Africa, where European countries were attempting to colonize Africa. Ethiopia was one of the few remaining spots in Africa which was not yet colonized by anyone. And Italy had started picking off chunks of it. So they had taken Somalia and they had taken Eritrea, which were part of Ethiopia, and they had thought that maybe they'd be able to conquer the rest of Ethiopia relatively easily, but they were mistaken. They attempted to advance into Ethiopia, and the leader there actually was able to rally his people to his side, and there was a battle, I can't remember the name, in 1896, in which 17,000 Italian troops were attacked by some 70,000 or more soldiers under the Ethiopian army who actually had European assistance. The Russians had supported the Ethiopians, as well as I believe to a limited extent the French, who didn't want to see any further rivals in the continent of Africa, and had supplied them with over 30,000 modern Mosin-Nagant weapons. Okay, we're going to bomb this location real quick. So they had supplied the Ethiopians with over 30,000 modern weapons, and the Ethiopians essentially overran the Italians, inflicting more than 10,000 casualties out of an army of just 17,000 men. It was the most devastating and humiliating defeat of any colonial army against a native, if you will, a native population. And again, it was so embarrassing that the Italian government actually collapsed. What's this? Okay, so we captured the city. So again, it was so embarrassing that the Italian government actually collapsed under the political impact of the embarrassment. And let's see here, I just got an alert. Territory. Okay. So we're trying to get, what's our diplomatic offer? United States would like to propose the following diplomatic offer. I don't have enough knowledge of my finances or my resources right now to accept any kind of trade offers. I'll support Germany's reoccupation of the Rhineland. And okay. Okay. So our troops are moving south. We'll have these guys join in. We don't want to get overextended. At the same time, we don't want to fail to advance with sufficient strength. But anyway, so as I was saying, the Italian government was so embarrassed and had lost so much prestige in the defeat to the Ethiopians that the government fell. And it was actually, it's a rare thing for that type of thing to happen during colonial times. It was by far the worst defeat ever in colonial or European colonization of Africa, if you will. It was the worst defeat that any colonial country had suffered, and I believe it was the worst one that anyone would ever suffer. Probably the next closest would be Britain's defeat against the Zulu. I can't remember the Swalandia, if that's how you pronounce it. But yeah. Okay. So we need to, again, we get periodic updates that'll pop down on the screen about getting reinforcements here. It wants 10 units to this location within 60 days. It's kind of an arbitrary figure here. We've got exclamation points, which I believe indicate that we're low on supply, which makes sense. We're advancing into a mountainous, somewhat desert terrain, and it would make sense for supply to be somewhat of an issue here. So these guys are waiting for supplies to advance. These guys are already moving. These as well. I'm going to leave some of my troops behind to guard my supply lines. I've also got some other troops which I don't think need to be left behind. These are mostly all air units. I guess we could select all of our units and no, not what I want to do. Apparently you can't order a bombing raid when one of your units is a ground unit, so we'll move them there. Okay, so things are still moving slowly. Again, I do have the game on slow mode right now. Speed things up a little bit again until something happens. You can see troops advancing. These units are all advancing, making slow progress down here. Again, this section is just more of a distraction than anything. The main goal is Addis Ababa. I believe if we take the capital, we win. So the main drive is up here in the north. That's where my main focus will be. You can see here I'm flying a fighter unit over to this city. What is this town? Is this Wedelia? No. Where is Wedelia? Position infantry just at locations just outside of whatever this name of this town is. So there's a button here, you can center on your objective location. That's right here. So what we can actually do is we can order these guys to move here, these guys to move here. We'll tell these guys to stop a little bit short. I don't want to attack the city itself. They're moving in to protect the flanks. Again, they're doing okay. Alright, so let's go ahead and speed things back up. Again, this is a real-time strategy game, so you can kind of see that here, although there are economic elements outside of the military. My main goal here is to quickly conquer Ethiopia. We can delve into economics afterwards. Are these guys just like going off on their own? What's going on? We can order them to bombard, right? I don't know how close they have to get. Okay. Maybe we should bombard the city instead, since it's just one away. Yeah, we can do that. I wonder if the city's empty. Let's try and go in here. You can see there we are in the process of bombarding that city, probably turning it to rubble. Our tanks obviously don't have enough supply here to move too far. Again, our advance is limited by our supply lines. You can see there is an enemy garrison there that we are in the process of bombarding. We'll go ahead and attack them with our infantry. Hopefully we can overwhelm them. Losing some strength here. You can see this bar is going down. Enemy garrison not losing nearly enough strength. Apparently my artillery is somewhat ineffective. My infantry going down pretty darn fast. But now we can hopefully overwhelm them. We've got a whole bunch of infantry units there now. Enemy does have artillery support. So my infantry is going to attack this artillery. Garrison's growing weaker, but our infantry is losing heavily. I don't want to lose my guys. I feel like I'm about to lose these regiments. I mean, come on. Artillery shouldn't be very effective against an infantry assault. I guess I'm doing a little bit better. Apparently these guys are advancing without a supply line. That's not good. So pretty large battle taking place here. It's kind of hard to tell what exactly is happening. One would think I could overwhelm this garrison unit, but I'm about to lose the 43rd Infantry. The 42nd's weakened, the 25th and 26th are both also heavily weakened. And now the enemy is launching an attack against my flank. Come on, garrison, die already. And you guys need to move. Now. Alright, well that infantry unit just got cut off and destroyed. Awesome. So there's a strong enemy counterattack coming up here. Historically, the Italians actually struggled as well during the Second Italian Abyssinian Wars also. They got off to a decent start, but then around Christmas of 35, so before this game actually took place, they were being driven back by a counterattack that was launched by the Ethiopian forces, and there was actually a use of some chemical weapons as well as a result of some authorization given by Benito Mussolini to use chemical weapons in spite of various treaties which basically forbade the use. So we've obviously taken the city here, drove the enemy back, but this is still a pretty substantial enemy counterattack going on here. Hoping to overwhelm the enemy. I've got several units here. Trying to use my artillery maybe to pin them down. I don't know how successful that'll be. Looks like they're pulling back. Got that unit. So economics in this game is somewhat important in terms of production, and I think I should have a pretty substantial advantage in that here. There should be no way that the enemy can keep up with my production capabilities if it comes down to it. So we destroyed another enemy unit. We are losing a pretty substantial amount of our strength though, which is not ideal. Some reinforcements are coming in though. These tanks are pulling out, probably to refit. But this enemy unit won't last long. So there is a pretty decent victory here. The battle, or obviously the war, is not over yet, but we did just defeat several Ethiopian units. Looks like there was also an engagement down here to the south. Enemy cavalry's coming in. We should be able to take them out with our tanks. We heavily outnumber them here in the south. They're already pulling out. It could be a trap. I mean, maybe they're trying to lure us somewhere, but I don't see the point in that. So hopefully we get that unit destroyed. The more units we destroy, the better. Not sure why my guys are going off here on their own. 2 fresh infantry units. So I told my troops to repair. I don't know if they can do that. They might not be able to do that where they are. So I'm going to try and build up a new stack of pretty well saved units. I don't want my armor to advance. I mean, obviously I'm closing in on the capital. There's only a couple of more speed bumps in the way here. But again, in 1936, I believe it was, the war started in 1935. And again, it was Mussolini's attempt really to try and cement his power. Kind of, it talked about creating a new Roman Empire was a lot of the rhetoric that was being used, and this was kind of an attempt to right past wrongs, if you will, or show to the world that Italy was a world power and that they could avenge their previous defeats. And the war did not start off all that well for them either. Italy actually suffered some early setbacks. The Ethiopians launched some pretty successful counterattacks, so much so that Italy ended up resorting to the use of chemical weapons. Now, they tried to argue in the court of world opinion that they weren't really using chemical weapons. It was kind of a mustard tear gas mix, but and so they claimed, you know, because it wasn't lethal, that it was not illegal. And, well, you know, if you know much about the era, you also know that the United Nations of the time, the League of Nations, as it was called, was wholly ineffective, and despite issuing some sanctions against Italy, really didn't do a whole lot to, you know, chastise them, if you will, for their actions. And you know, it ended up being a pretty substantial turning point. You know, the chemical weapons in of themselves didn't turn the tide, but Italy would end up being victorious in the war. In the middle of 1936, I'm sorry, they finally overcame and defeated the Ethiopians and absorbed it into the Italian Empire, if you can call it that. So we moved on to the southern front here. You can see there's a village of Dilia. There's that cavalry unit we were engaged with we're about to destroy. Looks like we're doing all right on the southern end of things. And if you are watching, I do appreciate, you know, the viewership and all of that. I do apologize. The quality of the stream isn't all that great. And, you know, my conversation topics, I don't have, I'm not as good fleshing those types of things out in a live scenario. So it is something I want to work on. It is something that I can definitely improve upon. But I do just want to acknowledge that, you know, while I wouldn't claim by any stretch of the imagination to be a great streamer, I'm also, you know, very new to the whole live streaming portion. So I'll probably put this up on YouTube, and it won't be up to quite the standards of my normal YouTube videos. But that's mainly because of the fact that I'm just, you know, I'm still getting used to doing streaming. So you can see here, it looks like the enemy's launching some artillery barrages, which seem to be fairly effective against us. I assume it's from the city of Awasa. I wish my guys would move quicker. It seems like they're moving very slowly for being under fire. My tank is attacking some garrison over here. Why it's doing so, I don't know. They're attacking all by themselves. They're going to get themselves killed. Maybe my air support can come in. I'd select them all, but my, I don't know, are these recon units? It's hard to tell. This is a ground, these are patrol units. So I've only got one bomber unit there. So that tank unit's being forced to withdraw. You can kind of see my conquest of Ethiopia is growing. Although not over here. See, this is what I don't like. These tank units are just advancing south on their own. I'm not ready for that. I really am not ready for an attack on the enemy capital. I don't know why these infantry units are just kind of strolling along wherever they please. Or why this tank unit's just pulling back to wherever. I mean, it's nice that the game has AI to help manage this, because you know, you can imagine how much micromanagement this would really entail if you had to fight out like an entire World War II type scenario with this kind of interface. It would be very difficult. Just the scale of it wouldn't be doable. See, our drive here in the south toward the enemy capital is making some progress. We've taken several cities, advancing up this roadway. Advancing along roadways is critical in this game because of supply lines. Supplies are represented and roads do provide supply. Attacking the city of Sheshmi with a pretty strong force. I have suffered some casualties, but I don't think this garrison will last much longer. So another garrison and another city, Nigella, or however you pronounce that. Seems like one enemy after another. You know, you take one town and then you just have a whole another storm to deal with. Again, my guys are taking these towns, but it's not cheap. My troops are definitely being worn out. See there, I just lost a unit. I would like for some artillery to bombard the enemy. So you get these little news reports as well that apparently pop up, so that's kind of cool. But definitely losing more men than I can really afford to. And these armor units, don't do that. Don't be stupid. Don't advance on your own and get yourself destroyed. Trying to reform these infantry guys here in this town. It looks like these guys are gaining reinforcements, so I'm hoping I don't buy the enemy too much time to strengthen themselves. Now if I can attack from the south, I can draw some troops off when this main attack comes from the north, and you can see these 3 infantry regiments were pretty well worn down. They have gained some pretty substantial reinforcements now. And there's another town down, so I can't imagine the enemy has much more in the way of defenses until we start getting really close to the capital, like Desberet and maybe Nazareth. You can see this enemy infantry unit has attacked my armor. Again, not sure why this armor unit decided to charge all the way up there on its own. I guess we'll make our move now that the enemy has engaged us. We'll just use this infantry unit as a garrison. Motorcycle recon unit. Looks like it's a pretty fair fight. My reinforcements should get there in time to save the day. And then we'll be off to the races. Meanwhile, in the south, we're driving north as well. So the more we do, the more the enemy has to keep a lookout for us. Maybe I'll just kind of let my guys go at it down here on their own, kind of take their time. They're losing more than they're getting, but wow. Well, those guys just gave that enemy recon unit, a rude awakening. Lost almost half its strength in a split second. You can see here some of this territory got consolidated. I don't know if that's just because I've held it for a certain amount of time, but it looks like some of that territory I didn't even move troops through it has expanded a bit. So that's good. That motorcycle recon is now engaging 2 of my armor units. Unit lost. So we get these little updates. Looks like we lost some territories, lack of supply, lost a few units. Those were all a while ago though. So these guys are kind of advancing and getting cut off and all of that. So can't advance much down there in the far south, it appears. Another enemy city captured as we're continuing to advance from the south slowly but surely toward the enemy capital. That tank unit looks like it's pulling back to refit. I'm calling these infantry guys to support this one because it's losing pretty heavily. Yeah, Ethiopia was really the first example of a fascist country in Italy kind of violating the post-World War I accepted, use of combat forces and troops and going to war really in an unprovoked nature. And then, interestingly enough, the League of Nations did nothing, and then very shortly thereafter Hitler remilitarized the Rhineland and really started his march back into making Germany a world power, or at least, trying to. So here we go, we're going to move in on the capital. I think that might be that motorized recon. Yep, that's that armored car unit that had suffered pretty heavily. Holy cow. Enemy artillery. Oh, good lord. My armor's not doing all that well. So you can see here it's a pretty fierce fight. Apparently some of my troops here in the south are starting to get into the action around the capital too. My troops are taking very heavy losses very quickly. These guys are not going to last long at all at this rate. I'm just trying to isolate the city and kind of take out one unit at a time. My troops in the south are losing heavily too, so this is kind of a climax of sorts. My artillery's being driven back. Everything's pretty much being driven back. The enemy artillery is just too strong. Just losing tons and tons of units here. Just a murder. Just, oh my goodness, just look at all those units just gone. Gone. I was so close. Look at that. The enemy capital surrounded on two sides. And just getting obliterated here. I don't even have a chance. Oh my goodness. Well, that didn't go the way I had hoped. We've lost over 15 units now. Oh my goodness. Look at all those units lost. Yeah, so I don't really think I have much of a chance here. The enemy's launching a counterattack against my southern flank, and now that my northern one is pretty much spent, I've got a couple of artillery units and one infantry unit just kind of hanging out here, holding the front line near the enemy capital, but I don't know. So yeah, this is I'm pretty much done. I don't think I have any chance of taking the capital with the small force that I have left. Got a couple of infantry regiments here that I could bring south. Maybe they could do something. These units are all retreating north. I assume, you know, they can reform and refit somewhere here in Erythea. But I'm not really 100% sure. You can see the enemy's attacking my remaining troops in a full-on counteroffensive now. I'm pretty heavily outnumbered. So we did just knock out that one enemy unit on our flank. Kind of feels like they're counterattacking everywhere. Oh, what a bloody mess for everyone involved. Well, that's clearly a defeat. I don't have the forces to drive this many enemy troops back. They're just too strong at this point. We drove all the way to the capital. Had a pretty strong force ready to go against it. We even had some guys in the south. And we got pretty darn close. This reminds me of one of those maps of Russia during the beginning of World War II, where they were driven all the way back, and you can just see these massive territorial gains by the Germans, only to fall just shy. And that's that's kind of what's going on here. Um, you know, maybe I can figure out a way to salvage this, but I don't have enough troops standing in the way of the Ethiopians if they want to counterattack us. And there really isn't a ton in Italy I could bring in as reinforcements. So for the moment, anyway, that's gonna just about... What just happened? Huh. So I don't think I have any chance still, but my troops are still attacking. But anyway, as I said, you know, there's really not any way that I have enough troops here to take it. This is kind of a last gasp. I guess I'll save the game. We'll see what I can do later. Maybe I'll do another stream with this. Initial impressions, the actual fighting aspect of this RTS, it's a little bit micromanagey. You know, it's somewhat manageable for this conflict between Italy and Ethiopia, but if you get into a full-scale World War II, just too much going on. On the plus side, the AI does control itself, so it can handle a lot of the combat. You see a lot of troops moving around, but it doesn't seem to handle supply lines and building coherent, you know, offensives here, because you can see down here the AI left to its own devices is getting several units cut off just in the middle of nowhere without any enemy resistance. Um, Again, I think, you know, for a real-time strategy game on the grand level, if you will, it's so far it seems okay. I'm more interested in the diplomacy and politics and production and how all of that's handled. Um, the battles are very abstract, almost Crusader Kings like, where you build up your force and just kind of set them at the enemy. So that's my take. It was enjoyable, you know, an enjoyable hour or so, however long we've been doing this, and I'll go ahead and throw this on YouTube if you like it or you'd like to see more. Obviously, please tune in, check it out. But until next time, this is the Historical Gamer. Thanks for watching.